Leslie, start us. Hello, good morning. Welcome back. It's our sixth and final session, Human Resources and Graduation. Hope you all are doing well this morning. I'm gonna tee it off to you, Lisa, and we'll get rolling.
Right. That's right. So welcome to the graduation day. I see some folks already have their backgrounds and ready to go. Well, that'll happen a little bit later, but thank you for putting the background up, and thank you, Rebecca, for getting all those instructions out to everyone on how to do that. So looking forward to that. That's fine, Pamela. So again, welcome to the last day, graduation. You made it through. We'll have a short session on human resources, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we're going to roll into graduation. But wanted to start off final time, just thanking our sponsors once again. As you can see here, Triangle Community Foundation, Duke Continuing Studies, and Guilford Nonprofit Consortium. And don't forget, for those of you that are interested, stay tuned. Rebecca will give instructions on, if she hasn't already, on how to apply for those Duke Continuing credits for nonprofit management. So like I mentioned, today we're going to do a recap of session 5, and you can see under financial management where we left off last week, and we do realize there was a lot of information given. Again, that could be a session within itself, and we did see some of the feedback that suggested that, and believe me, we've thought back and forth. We've talked about that continuously about whether or not adding a session 7, but that's still up in the air at the moment, about breaking up those two topics. Under fundraising, as you can see, the highlighted areas were mainly concentrating on all the areas here, but specifically on fund development strategies, fund development human resources we'll go through overview as well. So with that, I'm sorry, let's go to see that's our recap. And then for our agenda for today, that's there's still a lot to cover under human resources. As you can see here, this is our agenda for the day. We'll put breaks in as necessary. We'll have our graduation, and as usual, our evaluation and closing. And then that would be that. And just, if any of you are attending our conference this year, hope most of you will, if not all, we're going to be recognizing our graduates. So we really hope that you all will be there so we can have you stand up and be recognized as a graduate of our MPMI Institute. So just wanted to say that, give you a heads up on that one. All right, after that, I think I'll hand it over to Dr. Palmer.
Good morning, everyone. It is good to be here. And I don't know if the sun is shining nice and bright where you are, but it is where I am. We're supposed to have 75-degree weather today. So it's a really nice day. I was telling my colleagues that I'm a North Carolina A&T alum twice. And so this is GHO weekend, the greatest homecoming on earth. And so our city has been taken over by Aggies, and that started on Sunday. So it's a beautiful, beautiful day here, and it is supposed to be great weather all week. So hopefully you're experiencing the same where you are. As Lisa mentioned, I see you, Angela, in the chat. So there is if we could go back to the previous slide. And I do see a few comments. It is good to know when there are other Aggies in the midst. So thank you all for that. Yeah, it's busy in our community this week. But at any rate, so as Lisa mentioned, in terms of our recap of session 5, we covered quite a bit of information. We focused on financial management, and Tracy was a part of that, and we thank and appreciate her for her expertise looking at that topic. These are the highlights of fundraising in terms of what we shared. And we focused on 5 main areas. Definitely, there's so much that we could cover on all of these topics, but these were the areas that we highlighted. So if I could get the team to go back to session 5, starting with slide 29. Good morning. Oh, I love the gallery. I love it when I can see everybody. hey, and all the graduate, I see, oh yes, all of the backgrounds with our graduation images. That's really, really great. It's good to see all of you. So I just want to point out and highlight two topics from that work. That is fund development strategies and fund development human resources. So in terms of thinking about fundraising, it is important for us to be mindful of kind of what our overarching strategy will be, but also in terms of the assistance that we will need and the help, the people that are essential to helping us to implement our fundraising strategies and to do the work related to any fund development plan. We looked at an image last week that showed us a pie chart. And in that pie chart, we were able to see probably about 10 different revenue streams for that organization. In order for that organization to achieve that, there was quite a bit of work that happened over the years. So when we see a diversification of funds coming into a nonprofit agency, oftentimes there are some real intentional strategies that nonprofits are using. Many of us are very familiar with grant writing, and we write grants both locally with local opportunities and funders, but then there are also government grants that some of us write, both state and federal. When you get into the state and federal grant writing and or acquiring contracts on that level, it is important to keep in mind that there's probably going to be a need to have an administrator of those grants and contracts, someone who's paying attention to what the compliance requirements are, what guidelines you have to follow, reporting, and so on and so forth. And then there's earned revenue. And if you remember from the image that we saw for that particular YWCA of High Point, when you look at the earned revenue, they have an opportunity, a revenue generating opportunity, which is they have members that can join up with their organization. So they pay a membership fee. Then there's also opportunities to rent out space in a facility. That's earned revenue. Then also sometimes we will charge a nominal fee for programs and services. That's earned revenue. So when we think about fund development strategies, oftentimes it does come in a variety of ways. Social entrepreneurship is engaging in a profit-making venture while addressing a social issue or while addressing a community-related problem. We see this happening in healthcare, where we have nonprofit organizations that are partnering up with healthcare entities, and they're partnering up, but then they have an opportunity to generate revenue from that. That also aligns with, having a business model and really paying attention to generating a profit and monitoring that. So these are just a couple or two or three kind of fund development strategies that you may want to consider. When you look at the pie chart that we shared with you, you'll notice again that there's a variety of ways in which entities of that particular organization is bringing in dollars. Once we have a strategy, then we have to have people to help us to implement the strategies. I would advise, if your board of directors does not have a fundraising and or fund development committee, that be a committee that you establish and charge that committee with supporting the staff in fundraising and fund development. I think that's very, very important because it takes quite a few of us in order for us to get to sustainability and to diversify our revenue stream. So I think that's very, very important. We can go to the next slide. So the last point that is in our fundraising material is how do we, or who helps us to engage in fund development, and who helps us to do this fund development work. Some of us are fortunate that our nonprofits have paid staff to do that. We quite often, we have volunteers to assist our board of directors. And I mentioned being sure to establish a fundraising and fund development committee. And that could be comprised of board members and volunteers. It doesn't just have to be board members. You can identify individuals who really want to support your nonprofit, and maybe they don't have the time nor the interest in serving on a board, but they very much want to be a part of bringing resources into your agency. So that's an option for you. And then sometimes it's good to have an external resource to help you to create the plan. And then you and your staff and your volunteers implement the plan. It's not, it is an area, if you decide to use a consultant or a consultant firm to help you do that, it's not cheap. I mean, it does cost to be able to utilize that resource, but it is definitely an option to kind of have an organization come in and establish a fund development plan for you. So those are the last two topics for fundraising. And if we could go back to the session 6 PowerPoint and then go to slide 5. So again, our topics were fundraising and financial management. We took the time to specifically look at the different stages of fundraising, and then honed in on interfacing with donors and being mindful that as much of our dollars coming in that we can get from private donors that are unrestricted, the more flexibility we have in the work that we are able to do. And then, of course, fundraising programs. If I could leave a nugget with that, if your nonprofit does not have an annual fundraising campaign for operations, then I would begin to work to have that. That is very important. The overhead to operate a nonprofit organization outside of the dollars that you might get for programs and services through grants is very important to keep top of mind with your board, with your staff, and so on. And when it comes to the financial management and fundraising, the reason we put those two topics together is that oftentimes what we see is that in nonprofit organizations is that those two entities sometimes work separately, but they should work together. Fundraising should know what's happening on the financial management side of the organization. Financial management should know what's happening on the fundraising side. Both should be informing each other around strategies and how do we get to this ultimate goal of diversifying our revenue stream and ultimately sustaining our nonprofit organization. The other piece of this is being mindful of scale of your nonprofit in terms of capacity to be able to raise money and or acquire dollars through other means to help you to meet your budget, something that we talked about that each of our nonprofits should have. So that's a recap of session 5 and just kind of bringing some closure to that. If we could go back to the gallery view, and I just want to pause here for any questions or as it relates to these two topics. Lori, go right ahead.
Thank you. So we're knee deep in the budget for next year. I know we're a little behind the scenes on that, but 2 questions that we have saved for an emergency fund, and we're moving those monies out of our checking account and into a money market so that we have like 3 months savings. What we don't really understand after looking at all of the documents that you showed us last week, which were beautiful and overwhelming at the same time, is it okay to just put in there when that it's emergency fund money and that's what it's there for? And that's one question that leads to the next question is what we've never been able to figure out is, the vast majority of your donations come in at the end of the year. And then you carry those over into the next year. Nobody really knows like what you're supposed to call that line.
So take me back to the first question, because
Okay, the
those are
first
two
question-
big, okay.
Yeah. The first question is, we have an emergency fund now. Is it okay as a nonprofit to just have that in that's an asset? I get that, right? But that's monies that like, we hope to not have to touch those for a while. Is that okay as a nonprofit? Some people have said no.
That is okay. So first of all, as a nonprofit, we can generate a profit. So we can have money in the bank, right?
Right.
We can have
Right.
money in an investment portfolio. We can have money in a savings account. We can have money saved.
Okay.
It's up to your organization how you save it. Some organizations will put those dollars in an investment portfolio. Then it kind of grows, over the years, as long as the market is doing good, it grows. And when they have an emergency, they'll draw from that. Some have both. Some have those dollars and they might have a savings that they can easily access as well, to be able to draw from those dollars. So it's not a right or wrong. It's in the bigger picture of how you're managing your finances and what goal are you trying to achieve financially has a lot to do with that. And it is not uncommon for if you have grant dollars, most of those dollars coming in at the end of the year, I can see why it's a necessity for you to have those reserve, quote unquote, if you really want to call it emergency or reserves, you're really probably pulling from that to meet the demands of the dollars that you're waiting on later in the year. Because that's if not, then you're doing pretty good because you got a significant amount of cash flow. So that would be my answer to that. You asked about naming a line item in your documentation. Was your second question?
Yeah, a couple of different times when we've written grants, at the end of the year, a lot of your funds come in from Giving Tuesday to December 31st, and those carry over into the next year. And a couple of the grant people were like, well, what is this? Like, why did you have this money at the end of the year? Is there a terminology that you just put in the budget as a nonprofit that shows this is carryover money from last year?
You could very well do that.
So what do you call it? That's what we haven't figured out. Nobody can tell me, like, what do you call that it's clearly evident to the person reading the grant?
I think you can customize that. So if you think about when you generate a budget, every budget is authentic. Yeah, there's some budget line items that you might see the same name from nonprofit to nonprofit, from budget to budget. But if you have something very unique that your funders are inquiring about, you can very well, I don't know what you would name it because I don't have enough information about the complete picture of what you're talking about. But you could very well show in your documentation, in your reporting, that you have these dollars for a particular reason, set aside for a particular purpose, or named in a particular way under assets, so that it shows that, yes, you have these dollars, but these dollars eventually are going to be utilized. I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay, yeah. That's what we do. We weren't sure if there was a term that we should have been using, a finance term.
Right. And I'm not a CPA, so I don't
Gotcha.
profess to be an accountant. But what I do know in developing budgets, whether it's a business, nonprofit, or what, regardless of what type of organization it is, it's your budget, it's your bookkeeping, and you can establish that and customize it in a way that conveys the information that your funders are inquiring about.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Nicole.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going back just a couple of, going back a few, because she made a statement and said something about fundraising annually? This should be something that we're doing annually. Should it be like a larger fundraiser, or can we do many fundraisers throughout the year? Or should we have like an end of the year? Because I know this year, this will be our first end of the year gala that we're going to hold. And we're bringing funders and community. So this is the first time that we're doing this type of fundraiser, and it's going to be on a larger scale. So should we be doing something like this every year?
So here again, it's customized to meet the needs of your nonprofit and what your ultimate goal is. I do encourage you in every nonprofit to have that at least one annual fundraiser that is for the purpose of bringing in dollars for operations, and that those dollars are unrestricted. The market may not allow or lend itself for you to do several mini fundraisers, right? I mean, you have to kind of do a little bit of research to determine what your ultimate master plan is going to be. And I'm not in your community, so I can't give you a prescribed response. But you do have to pay attention to, and I use the terminology market, because you got other nonprofits, they're doing fundraisers. Some of them are doing several, some of them do main ones. You got to look at the time of year that other organizations are doing fundraisers. What's the best time for you? What aligns with your mission? Choosing a fundraiser that really matches up with what you do. Now, that was a mouthful, because those are the layers of the answer to your question. There isn't just I wouldn't say to you, oh no, don't do any mini fundraisers. I would not say that. It depends on what your market can stand. I know that in my community, we have 2 municipalities in one county. They're different. We have 2 United Ways, and I could go on and on and on. And so when organizations are trying to determine what type of fundraiser, when to do it, see, those are the kinds of things that you have to pay attention to. Some of your funders down the road may give you a blackout period, like United Way. United Way has a blackout period where you don't fundraise when they fundraise. So there are a lot of different elements to that, that I can't give you a cookie cutter response. It has a whole lot to do with all of what I just said. So, but if you have identified one main fundraiser that you are doing, that's a thumbs up. That's a really good start. Whether you should do smaller ones, I really have to have more information about your community.
Thank you,
Your
Dr.
agency.
Palmer. Thank
Mhm.
you.
You're welcome. Did I see another hand? Angie?
Yeah, I just want 2 things. Carrie, when you were talking just a little bit ago about the 3-month thing and we're working on that. We have a new director, and she's calling it a rainy day fund. So we've got 3 months to keep the programs going in case, God forbid, anything happens and we have a government shutdown again, because we do have a lot of money coming in from various grants and things. She has worked with our auditor on how to put the wording in that. She's also reached out to a couple of different places, North Carolina Community Action Agency, because we are a community action agency, and to CAPLAW about how to write those things into our plans, so that when we put in grants, that they know what we're doing with it. And one thing, when we were in the group last week, I shared this with a couple of people. One of the things that we have when it comes to fundraising is we have, and if you look at our website, there's a little thing down there about it's a continuous giving, to where people can, say that they're going to give a certain amount each month. When they visit the website or even the Facebook, that they can round up on a certain credit card, and so that keeps going. But that's maybe the easy way out, but it doesn't take a lot of time to manage that, and what it's taking time is getting people to know that it's there and they can, you know, round up their credit card or put in, you know, a certain amount each month that comes out. And that's the way we're making sure that our board, because a lot of the grants that we've been writing for, you have to have that 100% board involvement with fundraising. So, you know, like Dr. Palmer was saying, I think even if it's $1, it at least shows they're given, and you know, debit card, credit card, whatever, but it's actually working fairly well.
So Angie, let me make sure I'm clear, because I think you shared two different pieces of
Yes, I did.
information. So I want to make sure. So the first part was about the line item and naming it and all of that. And so I think we're all clear on that. It's really unique to your organization and what you want to call it. I do think it's important to, especially if funders are asking questions about it, to go ahead and put it in the documentation, you know, but there's no magic name for it that I'm aware of. And then the other thing I think you were talking about is a fundraising, a way to raise unrestricted dollars, which
Yes.
is to put a donate button on your website. People can donate, and to give them the option to pay over time a certain amount, or they can give a donation at once. So I want to make
Yes.
sure, because those were two different kind of things that you were sharing. And I do think if you have a web, if you do manage your website and you're keeping it updated, if you're keeping your website updated,
Yes.
then having a donate button is great. But if you're not going to keep that website updated, and I go there and I'm wanting to donate, and then I'm looking at information that's 3 years old, then that's not good. So if you're gonna, it is a convenient way for individuals to donate, because a lot of times, if you're out and about and someone says, "Oh, how can I help you?" "Oh, you can donate, and you can go to my website and do it." That's easy and great. Just make sure the websites are updated, because oftentimes what I run into is we're not updating our platforms, and information is very, very old. So if you're going to use that, just make sure you're keeping a current website. I'm going to move on. I think I don't see any more hands. Angie, is that a hand up from before, or
That's
is that a
from
new hand
before,
up?
but just the platform we use, it's called Harness.
Okay.
And there's another one of our community centers that I'm involved with. They do the Amazon Give thing. It's really easy. So I mean, may not be a lot, but it might be more than you think.
I think when you look at it from the perspective of diversification, these are all options that make up one family of strategies that you can use to raise money. What I always say to my colleagues is that fundraising is continuous. It's not this one thing that you do, and it's multiple strategies that we are managing and that we are implementing continuously, meaning we don't let up. And I think what happens oftentimes is we stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, and then you don't get the results that you're aiming for in terms of raising money. So consistency and frequency in terms of what you do is very, very, very important. And so we could talk fundraising all day, but we won't. So just keep in mind, we try to provide you with some tools that will be really, really helpful to getting you kind of set up and to begin thinking about formalizing the way in which you do fundraising. If we could go to the agenda slide in our presentation. That's slide 6. So here is our new information. So this is what we are working on today. We're going to be focusing on human resources, and that stands between you and graduation. So we are going to work right through our human resources information. We've got some breakouts built in and so on and so forth, but we'll kind of see how what the cadence is and just kind of move along in terms of our topic. And so we've broken this up into 3 categories: human resources related to recruitment, retention, and reward. Recruitment, retention, and reward. And so we will work on our human resource material, and then we will do graduation, do an evaluation, and we'll shed some tears because we'll be closing out the Institute for the fall. We are going to take a break before we jump into our new material, but this kind of tees us up for the various topics that we'll be talking about. We've got a laundry list of items here that we want to cover. The time is now 10:02. So if we could come back at, let's say 10:10, can we do that? If we could come back at 10:10, that would be great. And I'll see you on the other side of the break. So just want to point that out to you. As I mentioned before, our topic today is human resources, and it is divided into 3 different sections: recruitment, retention, and reward. And to kind of get us started, we want to focus on some guiding principles and values that we want to highlight for you. And so the team will be kind of navigating our platform here. We'll be going kind of back and forth to different pieces of information. And so again, we sent that information. We sent you a document titled Human Resources Handout. And of course, you have your workbook that we'll be referring to as well. And so, so just kind of keep that in mind. In terms of our guiding principles and values, we have a resource in your material, and it is the Equal Employment Opportunity information. So there's some federal statutes that are related to doing human resources and personnel administration as employers. And so we thought this would be real helpful to have this information for you. There's the EEOC, which is the commission, the EEOA, which is the act in terms of the legislative act. And then there is the EEOL, which is the law. And we have those links there for you. We also put in this document a list of what some of those are. Now, I'll tell you, it's quite a bit of intention on our part as employers to pay attention to when these policies and these federal statutes change. But it is at your disposal at these links to just kind of keep up with. And so again, we make sure that we listed those, and then we also included an overview of each one. And so in some of our nonprofit organizations, we're fortunate enough to have a staff person that focuses on human resources and personnel administration matters. But in some of our organizations, this is shared. And so the challenge is, like I said before, is really kind of keeping up with how these different statutes kind of play out in the work that we do each and every day. If you're not fortunate enough to have a human resource staff person, then you may very well want to look to your board to have a human resource professional on your board. And in some cases, some boards have personnel committees and or HR committees. So that gives you some additional skills and expertise. And it also gives you a resource that you can access readily. So keep that in mind as it relates to that. We also want to point out the EDI principle in our Principles and Practices Guide that's on page 19. That is one of the areas that we at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits We try to illuminate the interfacing of equity, diversity, and inclusion practices. And there's no better place to start than with the way in which we manage our human resources and the way in which we function related to personnel administration. And so we're going to do some, get into some particulars here in terms of all of these. Remember, we are looking at recruitment, retention, and reward. But these are some guiding principles and values that we kind of lift up as it relates to just human resources as a whole. I see a question in the chat. Would the HR committee be a paid committee? Not if it's a part of your board. Committees, we do not pay board members. We don't pay board members. They don't receive compensation. They might receive reimbursement for the kinds of things that, like for mileage or something like that, or if they're doing something on behalf of the nonprofit, but they do not receive compensation in any form. So this is an extension of your, board. So here is the next topic that we're going to focus on is recruitment. So we're going to kick that off. Lisa, did you have anything that you wanted to add to any of the guiding principles and values related to HR personnel administration? All right.
I think you're on mute, Lisa. Were you trying to say something?
Oh, you were? And
I'm
looked
sorry.
To the left. I was shifting my material, and so I didn't even see your lips move.
You just thought I was ignoring you, didn't you? I was saying, no, I don't have any points. I have some points later on as you get into some other areas of HR. Sorry about that.
No worries. No
Can't
worries.
see
at
my
all.
mute button.
No worries. Thank you. Okay. I was shifting my material here. Okay, recruitment. So let's kind of jump right in. If we could go to our slide there for recruitment. So we're going to focus on on several topics rather. Job title in terms of creating job descriptions, roles and responsibilities. We have a template of a job description for you in your material. It's a worksheet and it's on page 127 through 128. There's a sample job description for you. And then we want to talk a little bit about compensation, hiring practices, and living wage. We have some materials there for you. So in your, let me grab my packet here. In your packet, in your material, you have a job description worksheet. And you have two worksheets. One is titled Roles and Responsibility, and then the other one is a template. And so I want us to just kind of do a little bit of practicing. So if we're going to recruit for roles in our nonprofit organizations, it's important for us to have a job description. And so we're going to practice writing and putting together a job description. So you have a worksheet titled Job Description Worksheet, Roles and Responsibilities. And there are 6 questions that are a part of that. The first question is, what is the title for this position? We are all going to do executive director. We're all going to do executive director. So that's the title. What is the purpose of this position? We're going to have you fill that in. What would this person do on a daily basis? You're going to answer that question. What skills are necessary to complete these tasks? Give us about 10 different skills for that. How many hours per day, hours per week are required to complete this task? And don't all the executive directors laugh at one time for question number 5. Don't do it. Just look the other way. Don't comment about that. But anyway, number 5, how many hours per day, hours per week are required to complete the tasks that we've listed? And then who will supervise this person? Who will supervise this person? So I see some reactions going on in the chat. So we're all going to take some time to fill out this form, and we are and we'll come back and have some discussion about these. So I'm going to go silent here for just a couple minutes. Again, we are all going to practice writing descriptions and answering these questions for the position of executive director or president and CEO. Just depends on how you name the person that runs your nonprofit. So I'm just going to go silent here for a couple minutes while you fill in those answers to those questions. Okay, so let's kind of talk through a little bit about the executive director roles and responsibilities. Again, our focus here is to kind of reiterate a best practice of having job descriptions for each of the positions that you have in your organization. And this is both for volunteers and paid staff. Recruiting volunteers to assist, I think it's very helpful when you can hand them a description of what it is you're expecting of them as they volunteer. So that's important as we do this. So let's kind of talk about what is the purpose of this position. And if we could go to the gallery view, I think everyone should be kind of, yep. So what is the purpose of the executive director or the president and CEO of a nonprofit? And you can put it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself. And I'm going to walk us through this fairly quickly So just kind of keep in mind. And I'll get, I don't know, Lisa or Rebecca, if you would help me with the chat comments.
Yeah, so far to oversee day-to-day management, manage and oversee, operation, lead and manage, leadership. That's the majority of the answers you're getting.
All right. Okay, Carrie, I see your hand.
Yeah, for me, it is, the main purpose of the role is to oversee that the operations of the organization align with the mission and everything that we do.
Mhm.
Nicole, I see your hand.
I was going to say the same thing. I said the purpose of this position is to carry out the mission, implement the goals and values, and make sure all align with this organization and oversee all departments of operations.
Excellent, great. And I see a couple of more items in the chat as well.
Mhm. Fiscal oversight, leadership. Angela wrote a lot. Assumes primary leadership, responsibility for organization's overall management. Duties include serving organizations as a spokesperson, building relationships, fundraising, planning. Okay, great.
Yes.
Oversight,
So-
carry out mission. Mhm.
So our executive director is responsible for ensuring that the day-to-day operations occur. And there are a lot of different elements in that. I always like to say that the executive director or the president and CEO of a nonprofit, they provide leadership and they oversee management. And so they actually serve in both of those capacities. We're looking for them to advocate and be the cheerleader and to be the encourager of our staff and volunteers and board members, et cetera. And we're also looking to them to ensure that the day-to-day operations occur and that we are meeting all of our promises that we've made to all of the different stakeholders that we encounter. And so that is definitely the purpose there. The other thing to note here is that the board chair, so the president of the board of directors, does not provide the oversight of day-to-day operations. That is the responsibility of the executive director and the president and CEO. And when that line is crossed, we start to have problems, like major problems. So we want to make sure that everyone understands their role. Board members should have job descriptions, and board chairs should definitely have job descriptions. And when we onboard them, we should make sure that they understand that, because sometimes they get that all mixed up. What would this person do on a daily basis? So give me a few things. Just kind of drop it in the chat or just unmute yourself and go for it.
Dr. Palmer, I said connect with staff, follow through with grant writing, look for funding opportunities, oversee daily operations of the organization.
Awesome. Thank you.
Coordinate with staff, donors, volunteers. Kim wrote. Communicate with the board.
Awesome.
Mhm.
I would add that, so the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits have 12 principles around managing nonprofits, and I would encourage us to continue to revisit those. And we do consider those to be areas of work for the CEO of a nonprofit, working within those 12 principles. Of course, we're covering 6 of those in this institute. What skills are necessary to complete these tasks? So what skills or expertise?
Grant writing, time management, relationship building, be aware or tech savvy,
Thank you.
leadership
Coaching.
skills.
Communication.
My DED has said, you got to be able to wrangle cats, put out fires, swat gnats, start fires, be the chief cook and bottle washer, and you have to have a little bit of everything.
Yep. Being able to trust, forward thinking, and follow the rules.
Okay.
Delegation. Willing to learn. Yep.
Question on that rule, follow the rules. But shouldn't the ED also be able to challenge the rules to see if they truly fit with what our mission is?
I do think that that sometimes is a part of what we find ourselves doing when necessary. And I'll leave it at that. I think every nonprofit has a different personality, a different culture, a different approach to maybe advocating in a way that further moves the mission and the vision of their organization. I do agree with that. But I do think it kind of shows up, and it should be approached differently depending upon your nonprofit and how it functions.
And
Yeah.
when I say that, it's bringing in the equity, equality, and all of that, and challenging the old school, bringing it into new school.
Yes, I agree. But I also think that you have
And
to
being
be
cautious,
mindful.
very
Yeah, you have to
cautious.
be mindful of the culture
Mhm.
of your community and of the organization that you represent. And I also think, and I'll just kind of speak for myself, working in my community and working in a capacity of influence as it relates to issues and as it relates to how we do what we do to support or to move a particular mission or a particular cause forward. I think you have to build some social capital in order to be able to do that in a way that's not counterproductive to what it is that you're trying to achieve. So yes, I do agree that there are times when that may be necessary, but I also think you have to manage that in a very strategic way so that when you do challenge, it's not counterproductive to what it is that you are actually trying to do. You know, equity, diversity, inclusion is the flavor of the month right now. You know, we go through these eras, right, and movements and all these different things. But not every organization is at the same place to be able to ensure that those practices are happening and that they play out. And so I always encourage folks that, you know, once you as the executive director make an observation and decide that you want to maybe approach an aspect of the work of the nonprofit differently than it has been in the past, that there is a process to that. And I think you have to really be mindful of how you go about doing that. And again, making sure that you don't compromise the very work that you're trying to promote. You don't compromise that in your strategy or in your technique in terms of how you challenge that. But should we be prepared to do that? Absolutely, we should.
Mhm.
But
And
there are a lot of moving parts with that.
Yeah, and I want to just bring attention, a good point Rebecca put in the chat, rules may equal legal compliance. So just again, depends on what you're challenging and how you're challenging it. Just keep in mind your legal compliance obligations too.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yes. Let's go to the next one. Number 5. Carrie was just falling out laughing over that one. How many hours per day, hours per week are required to complete these tasks? Here we go.
A
I
bazillion.
said endless. I said endless, Dr. Palmer. I said endless, but I also said it may vary depending upon the day. And I said the goal is to have the organization run like a well-oiled machine to decrease time.
Yes. Man, I wish there was a schedule, like a definitive schedule, but there is not. What I will say though is that executive directors should manage their time wisely and pay attention to self-care. Establish some boundaries and some parameters, because in that role, the work can sometimes become very fluid, so fluid that it rolls over into your personal life, it rolls over into every weekend, it rolls over into, so you have to be very intentional about managing your schedule and managing your time so that it is reasonable and that it is a schedule that you can maintain. Self-care is very, very important. And also empowering and building the capacity of your staff so that they can function at a high level in their roles. So there's that. Who supervises the person? I'm going to kind of move us along a little bit.
Board
Who
of directors.
The board of directors. Yes. Executive directors should have an annual performance evaluation. If you are not receiving an annual performance evaluation, advocate for that with your board. They owe you that. So there should be a formal process in place for the executive director to be evaluated, and it should probably be a pair, at least the board chair and or another board member. So there should kind of be some balance there.
That's actually written in our bylaws
Mhm.
for our board.
Very, very good. Very, very, very good.
Jasmine's asking, should board members ask staff for input for ED?
It's okay to do that. Some evaluations are 360. You know, we use a 360-degree kind of approach. But typically the way in which the evaluation occurs, the beginning of formulating that is with the board. And so there should be some discussion around that, and they should be managing that. But absolutely, you can involve staff. All right, in your packet, so we focused on the executive director and the roles and responsibilities of that person. You have an additional resource in your packet. It's titled Job Description Format. And so it's a template where you can transfer the information that you put on the roles and responsibilities worksheet. You can transfer that information into this template, and voila, you have a job description. The other thing I'll point out is you may want to look at other roles in your organization. I would use the same format, not this format in particular, this is just an example, but I would definitely have a job description format that you have for every single job and volunteer role in your organization. And then that way you can quickly reference this and you can share it with folks when you are onboarding them and bringing them into your organization. The next thing I want to point out in your, did somebody say something? I thought I heard something. Okay. The next thing I want to point out in your packet are determinants of compensation. So I want to just spend a little bit of time on compensation, hiring practices, and living wage. I want to kind of wrap that all up together. We cannot tell your nonprofit how to function, but I do think it is in the best interest of the executive director, the person who typically makes decisions around these types of things. And if there's an HR committee with the board, you know, kind of engaging them. But we should definitely be responsive to best practices in terms of hiring practices. And we provided a resource for you in your packet. That is the EEOC link. And so there is, they have all kinds of information there for best practices. But in terms of compensation, we actually put in your packet, in your workbook, some determinants of compensation. So at the very top, there is the pay philosophy. This is I'm sorry, if we could go to, there we go. Thank you. So having a philosophy around compensation is a decision that your nonprofit organization can make. And so, you know, in terms of thinking about how you approach it and kind of what you aspire to be and do as it relates to compensating your staff. And we know that some of our organizations are just challenged. You know, we don't have a lot of cash. We don't have a lot of dollars. And so I'm not suggesting that you make promises that you can't keep. We're just wanting you to kind of have these things top of mind. So when you think about determinants of compensation, it's the individual philosophy of the nonprofit. The law and the statutes are relevant in terms of that. And so we've got some external, some internal, and kind of some individual considerations for us to think about. It is important to do our research and to kind of pay attention to what's happening. We've provided a link for living wage, and we've also provided a link for salary and benefits. There's a report that's out, and then a national report as it relates to compensation, hiring practices, and living wage. And so it's important to kind of monitor this year after year, and monitoring the way in which we compensate in our hiring practices and what our wages are. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are able to make those changes once you have been informed, but it's important to be informed just so you know and understand the lay of the land and what the landscape is when it comes to all three of these. And so we just wanted to point that out. The lead, match, and lag. So here we're talking about sometimes in terms of philosophy, we want to try to think about whether or not we're able to match what the market holds. Where are we? Are we leading? Are we matching when it comes to compensation, or are we lagging behind? And what we want to do is we want to try to stay in the match and lead kind of philosophical way of thinking about compensation, and not just kind of leave this dormant to where we are lagging even in our just communicating to our staff that, hey, we may not be able to meet the market with this particular role or what have you. And we acknowledge that. And being just real straightforward about that is important. So that's what that lead, match, and lag. So where is your nonprofit? Are you leading? Are you kind of matching, or are you kind of lagging behind in that? And where do you want to be? Where do you aspire to be?
Dr. Palmer, a quick question on top of going back to job descriptions. Someone's asking, we missed the question, how often should you update your job descriptions or review them?
It's really good to do this when you do the performance evaluations of your staff. I think that's a really good time to do it. You're already looking at the job descriptions anyway. You're looking at the performance of your staff. You're trying to determine whether or not staff are, performing as it relates to what's in their description. So that's a really good time to do that. And then you're not kind of doing double work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Retention is the next kind of area. So that was about recruitment, job descriptions, compensation, hiring practices, living wage. And what I didn't say, but what we're going to get into here is having a personnel or an employee handbook is important. Having an HR manual is important. And being able to share that with staff in terms of just kind of how you do human resource management and or personnel administration. So background checks are sometimes required for some positions, depending upon what the positions are. You can do background checks that are statewide. You can do background checks that are nationwide. There are different kind of levels of doing background checks. And so that's a very important part of recruitment, yes, but also retention. There are also times where with your staff, you're going to need them to sign off on conflict of interest and confidentiality agreements. Boards of directors should do this every year. This is a part of that kind of orientation to being on a board. That's very, very important. Volunteers should also keep in mind that volunteers may also have to sign off on conflict of interest and confidentiality agreements. And also in terms of thinking about legal compliance, we share with you our legal compliance checklist from the center. And so we do have that available to you There are items that are listed in the legal compliance checklist that relate to employee relations or human resource management. So that's a tool that you can also reference just to make sure that you are in compliance. The next item on our list is employee benefits. Now, oftentimes what we think about is or we're limited sometimes in the benefits that we offer because most of our organizations are not huge. And so sometimes we struggle with, well, how do I create a package for this executive director, for example, that we did the job description for? How do we create a packet for them, a benefits packet that's going to be attractive? Because again, oftentimes we have very limited resources. And so in your packet of information, we have two kind of worksheets that we want you to work with. And we're about to go into breakouts to do this. We have employee benefits is titled on one, and then the other is titled employee relations. So when we look at the employee benefits information, we've outlined some things that kind of make sense in terms of being able to put together a packet. Oftentimes we think about benefits as being health insurance, dental insurance, those kinds of things. But there are other ways that we can establish benefits for our staff. We could offer flexible work schedules, and now some organizations are offering some hybrid of virtual, flexible type work schedules. I will say we have probably since COVID, we have moved so far away from a traditional work schedule. And some of our nonprofits are trying to hold on to that. But the market is such that individuals can work creatively and in some very unique situations. So that work schedule is a way to kind of create a benefit. Self-care, the fact that we are going to encourage that and we're going to be a part of the self-care of our staff. Discounts. Some of us, we have members on our board or we have resources in our community that we partner with that we might be able to get, discounts. Like some of our organizations might be in good relationship with a YMCA, and maybe a YMCA might offer a unique membership to your staff that maybe you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have that partnership. Or maybe there are some local resources like a dry cleaners or some other resources that your staff might use that you might be able to offer some discounts, or you might be able to get some things for free just for your staff. So thinking creatively about how to create some perks and some benefits. Professional development, there are opportunities for professional development that are like a nominal cost or no cost. And so doing that research and keeping them, helping them to stay current in their skills and expertise. Having some work-life balance, that's another part of that. And then also just plain old having some fun. Sometimes our work is such a heavy lift, like emotionally, in terms of the type of work that we do, that we might need to insert into that atmosphere some celebratory kind of fun-like types of ways to kind of keep our staff engaged. And so those are some examples, just some examples of some benefits that we thought we would share with you. The next page in your packet is employee relations program. And we're looking at this from the perspective of employee relations and employee retention. So in your packet, you have this piece of information, this handout. And what we're looking at here and what we want to promote is a total person approach to working with and supporting the people that we employ, and also volunteers. And so we want you to take a look at this and then think about some examples on how you can build the capacity of your human resources, of how you can build capacity of your human resources. And so we want you to think about this and to do this in breakout rooms. We gave you some examples of hours. And so we want you to take that into consideration. Go to the worksheet page. It looks like, I'm going to have our team show you what that page looks like. It's in your workbook. One more. So you're going to be kind of using this sheet and keep going. Sheet in your breakout. So this is the sheet here. So we've talked about employee relations. That's the handout before. And we've talked about, looked at some just plain old retention kind of strategies by creating some benefits. And so what we want you to do is to use these pieces of information to complete some examples of how you might be able to enhance the capacity of human resources in these areas. And we're going to give you some examples of how might you retain staff related to employee relations? How might you retain staff related to employee retention? And so we've got paid staff, volunteers, board of directors, program participants, and donors, because these principles kind of go from, the traditional kind of human resources way of thinking about personnel administration, but also we have to do human resource management and personnel administration with our volunteers, and also with those folks that we're considering just stakeholders in general. So I'm going to turn it over to our team to put us into breakout rooms, and you're going to fill in your worksheets.
All right. We've got our rooms all set up, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes or so. All right.
Smile.
This
Can I see your best smile? Let's see. I'm looking.
I like Alicia. She has stuff.
Jolanda, am I pronouncing your name right? Jolanda? Jolanda?
Yes, you are.
Love it. I love those cheeks. Ooh, yeah. Great. Good to see your smile. Hopefully you were able to get a little bit more acquainted, as you talked about how we might approach retaining our stakeholders, and also just some strategies that we might want to think about. We want to hear from, I was going to say 3, but I think I'm going to say 2. We want to hear from 2 groups. So can you share with us what you filled in to your worksheet in terms of some employee relations strategies and/or retention strategies? Anybody? And tell us who was in your group too.
Dr. Palmer, it's Nicole. I'm jumping in.
Okay.
In the group, I had Charlene, if I remember, Elizabeth, and I want to say Miss Janet. Am I correct with that, with those 3?
That's right. Maybe we also had Mike or Sadie. I'm not sure if they were able to join.
Oh, okay. I didn't see anyone else.
They may-
Okay.
Yeah, they may not have been able to join, but good memory.
Okay. Yes. So we only got through volunteers for all 4 boxes, but for the paid staff, we all agreed on having clear onboarding and proper training, and having a clear expectation of what your role would be. For employee relations, for retention, we said communication, team building, having that open door policy, and recognition is always good to, keep people to stay with the organization. For volunteers, we said training and resources and having opportunities available for them to be able to volunteer. And then for the retention piece, we said consistent communication and involvement, volunteer appreciation. I shared with the group, I am in the practice, I've implemented taking the volunteers' birthdays and I put them on our calendar, and I use Kudo board. So when their birthdays come out or they're roll around, we just all sign that Kudo board and send it in an email to make sure they feel a part of the team, And then Miss Elizabeth said, Thank you notes is always good too. Like if you want to do a personalized note, and also getting them to participate in a program versus just coming to volunteer, maybe having them participate so they can really get a feel for the actual mission and see what's going on. And that's as far as we got.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. Is there another one? Tamika, I see your hand.
Hi, I'm with Group 5. Now, they may have to shout out their names because I didn't get all their names. But we had a few strategies that we were able to share in reference to paid staff retention. Some of the comments that we received, there was one group that offers a sabbatical for 3 weeks with paid leave. They can take it every 6 years. So we thought that was pretty interesting. In reference to volunteers in retention, do not abuse the volunteers. Give them
That's good.
or to volunteer, as they can, not overloading them. We also talked about communication as a tool for retention, making sure to invite and involve as much as possible. If that's the donor, if that's a program participant, keeping them informed. We also have from Faith Action incentives, because he mentioned that some of their program participants, they losing an hour of work time, etc. So provide an incentive for them to come and participate as a way to retain those folks within the organization. Now, I did get Mary Peters, paid staff. She said that if employees are happy, they are going to stay. So they have a monthly staff meeting where they offer lunch, opportunities to communicate about issues that they're dealing with and to try to get help from the group. We have Connie Carr. She was in reference to providing for your paid employees. So providing opportunities for them to take time off during the year. What they do is they close down to the public. So that way everyone has an opportunity to take their time off without having to, be in competition for time. They also provide additional PTO days. So if there's a holiday, they might take the Monday and the Tuesday, for example. And then Miss Sarah Sampson, she said in reference to the board retention, is recognizing their strengths and connecting with board members outside of the regular, day-to-day operation to get to know them and to make them feel connected. And then we had one last one for family engagement, and that's soliciting feedback and keeping them up to date with the different activities of the organization. And then I just want to conclude that I wanted to thank you, for mentioning about communications and having your website up to date. That is something that we try to, stress. Many organizations don't realize that folks are looking for it. They're looking for info. They're trying to see how active you are, how they can be involved. And if your website is not up to date, they may not think you're actually doing anything. And that can really cost you program participants. It can cost you volunteers and paid staff. So, I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Palmer, for stating that as a fact and backing us up, because that is an important piece. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. What I've noticed with the social media platforms, as we're talking about employee relations and retention, is that when those platforms are current and they're vibrant and photos are going up and little video clips are going up, it creates a sense of pride in the staff because they see it and people are responding to it and people are following, say the Facebook page and whatnot. And I know I've had organizations that I've worked with and, we might be in a training and a staff person will say, I was in the grocery store and someone walked up to me and said, hey, I saw the photos on your page, or I saw, so it really does matter. And that gives us all a sense of pride when people point out the fact that, hey, we recognize the work that you're doing, and you're able to do that through those social media platforms. So it's definitely important to keep those going. I think those were all great examples. And I think we can kind of all walk away with some inexpensive, right, or low cost, no cost ways of really kind of enhancing our employee relationships and also retaining the people that we have. And so thank you all for sharing. And I love the examples, and hopefully you were able to get some takeaways from that. The next topic is the employee handbook. So let me see with a show of hands. So use your raise hand function if your nonprofit has an employee handbook. Let me see. Do you have an employee handbook? Let me see by a show of hands. Great. Lisa and Rebecca and Leslie. Wow, we've got quite a few of us that have an employee handbook, and that is awesome. The other thing about that is to update that as well. So you want to make sure you're continuously updating that employee handbook. We want to show you just an example of a table of contents of an employee handbook. You may want to go back, now that we've talked about employee relations and retention, you may want to put something in your handbook related to that. It doesn't have to be, kind of long and drawn out, but you may want to acknowledge how you go about doing that, or the way in which you approach employee relations and also retention. So we're going to take a look at a table of contents. And this is a link in your material. This is a link in your material. So it's under retention, and it's labeled employee handbook. And while the team is pulling that up, I also want to point out the fact that we have listed here grievance process, a policy, and a succession plan. So those are two other kind of areas of retention that we need to be paying attention to. And so this is a resource called the Essential Nonprofit Employee Handbook Template. And so you can keep going. And I just want to, so here's just kind of an example of kind of what sections you might have in that handbook. So these are some general employment policies, and these align with that, let me go back. These align with your handout called Federal Statutes related to EEO. These align with that handout. So that's section 1, you can keep going. And so you kind of see those areas. And then employment status, here's another section. What I like about this resource is it gives you some specific detail about your handbook. And for those of you who have handbook, which many of us do in the group today, you can kind of compare and contrast what you have in yours compared to what we have here. So employment status and how that might change. This is a link, Janet. This is a link, and it is in the wraparound material that you received. The section 3 is recruiting and hiring. And so you've got those different pieces of information about that. We've got compensation and salary administration. Then if you come back, you've got general workplace policies. We've got employment benefit programs, ways in which folks can take a leave from work. If you're utilizing property or technology of the organization, and then also employee performance and workplace conduct. So these are some other areas that that you have when you separate, when an employee separates from the organization. And then in terms of acknowledging the fact that they actually received the handbook is always important to have them kind of sign off on that. So this is in the document that you have. And team, can we go to the this wraparound handout that we sent out so we can show everybody where these links are? So you received in your wraparound material, you received a document that looks like this. And so all that I've shared with us and will share with us, we have these links that are a part of that document. And so here is where the employee handbook link is for those of you that were looking for that. So it's not in the workbook. This was in your wraparound material. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Again, there are two more points in this area, that is having a grievance process. I would encourage us to put that in the handbook as well. And then for some of our nonprofit organizations, we have our CEO or executive directors who have already announced their retirement, and they are now working through transition steps to actually recruit and hire new EDs and presidents and CEOs. And so having a succession plan is important. One, when it's planned, you know, that folks are going to leave their role no matter what the position is. And then also when you have those times where it's unexpected, you know, where people separate from your organization and you didn't plan for it or you didn't anticipate that. So you always want to have a kind of a contingency plan in the event that people leave, especially those key positions in your organization. So that's important to keep in mind. Reward. I'm going to go back to Carrie. Carrie, you had a question. And then Lisa, I think there are several other questions in the chat at this point.
I'll let Carrie go first.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, so my, this is, I guess, HR related, but complicated. So when I used to be a volunteer at another nonprofit, and then they offered me a job, they discussed the legalities of an employee also volunteering and how complicated that was, that they said, and this was years ago, that you could not volunteer in the role that you were employed, but there's still a requirement that our employees volunteer. Does that make sense? Anybody ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so like I have
Mhm.
staff members that they volunteer here, and it makes, you know, so that they love the organization, they're part-time employees,
Mhm.
and they still want to be able to volunteer. We just want to make sure that we're completely compliant with the laws on that.
That's a slippery slope.
Mhm.
That is a slippery slope.
Yes.
You know, as long as nobody has any kind of angst or complaints, or you don't make anybody mad, you're probably in good shape. But if you enter in, if it boils down to some level of conflict, and that individual could take to task legally that they have worked hours that they've not been compensated for.
Mhm.
I would talk to, I don't know if anybody on this call wants to respond to that. I'm going to defer to a lawyer on that one, because that's a slippery slope. If I work, I am supposed to be compensated, period.
Right. So right now we have this differentiation where we have the verbal conversation before it happens. This is a volunteer role. This is a required role, right? This is a have to, this is a want to.
Mhm.
And I mean, so far it's fine, but as we grow, I wasn't sure if there was a legal issue there. Because there's been a lot of people that have donors that we've talked to, and they want to know, does your board and your staff donate money and volunteer? What percentage of that? And so for the staff, I just want to make sure that I'm not taking advantage, but at the same time, I'm also legally compliant.
And I will defer to a lawyer, because I'm not one. But I can tell you, I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Okay.
And remember, everything is okay when it's okay.
That's right.
Get one person to get mad about something,
Mhm.
then it turns differently. So just keep that in mind. Yeah.
Because legally, if I work and I'm keeping up with the hours that I work, I'm
Mhm.
supposed to get paid for it if I'm an employee.
Mhm.
And that'll
Yeah.
go a little bit when we talk more about exempt and non-exempt, because I know I
Mhm.
volunteer at the agency. I was working there, but then we'd have these Christmas events or someone can staff voluntarily come and help us do XYZ, you know, and I'd go. But, you know, whether I consider that volunteer work, and I mean, I didn't expect to get paid, but that's my own expectation. So I think, yeah, you just have to be clear with people, especially part-time people who are not
Mhm.
exempt. Yeah.
Mhm.
My only suggestion would be if you're gonna do it like that, get it in writing. Like
Yeah.
just say,
Mhm.
thank you for agreeing to volunteer your time at XYZ event. And then that way it's not just verbal because you can always argue, well, that's not what I said. So just let people know, hey, just so you know, I'm gonna, send an email to just recap what we talked about. And then just be clear in your email what the
Mhm.
expectations are as far as pay or
Mm.
unpaid.
Okay. It looks
Well,
like
you
Pamela
could-
had an issue with this at her place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I previously worked for an organization that had had people volunteering and working part-time with no benefits over a long period of time. And what ended up happening, somebody got upset and said that they had been working for a very long time and the organization had to retroactively pay those employees and then hire
Yep.
them as full-time
Mhm.
employees.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So you have to be really
If you
careful.
work, you're supposed to be compensated. If you are an employee and you work hours, you are expected to be compensated. That's.
Yes, and that I fully agree on. You know, we are staff-led, volunteer-run, and
Mhm.
all of our staff used to be volunteers.
Mhm.
And they want to continue to be able to do some volunteer work here. And I just want to make sure that
I'm going to
Does
agree
anyone else
with,
in the group
I
have
think
staff
it
that volunteer?
was, I'm going to agree with Charlene. I'm going to
Yeah.
say that if it is a policy of your organization, then it needs to be in your handbook and folks need to sign off on the policy. That would be fundamental. I'm not a lawyer. That would be fundamental, just kind of real basic level. We have this agreement and it's a very formal agreement that we have. But I will tell you, even with that formality, if I have worked and I'm your employee, I am entitled to be compensated.
Yeah.
And if I want to take the task, regardless of if I have that form in place, I could, because I'm supposed to be compensated for my time worked.
Yeah.
And it is
There's
the
a good-
expectation of the employer to understand the law, not the employee.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And Hannah mentioned another thing in the chat about it. It could also lead to other employees feeling obligated to volunteer, which could be an equity issue that you may not be like aware of, because we're all getting used to these things, right? The other thing I'll say, Carrie, is that you as a member, you may want to just submit a pro bono application for a legal volunteer, just to go over it with you,
Mhm.
provide you maybe with a template, provide you with a course of action to protect your organization in this instance. But
Thank you,
good
Dr.
question.
Campbell.
Really good
Yeah.
question. I mean, these things come up, right?
They
These sort
do.
of HR issues come up and they can be really frightening sometimes, I think, scary to kind of navigate. So it's really helpful when you can have some people to kind of bounce ideas with and have a mentor, have somebody on your board who's skilled in HR, really, you know, to make sure you have you got your toolbox filled up with ways to approach those situations.
Right.
But
And just
good
to
question.
clarify, because I'm seeing some of the comments, none of these are required volunteers.
Mhm.
It is absolutely not a requirement. The staff want to volunteer
Mhm.
on times that are not their normal, regular working hours.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone.
I worked
Rita?
in a position that required you to volunteer. When I was
Rita,
with the
you-
community college system, it was crazy.
Rita, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to add, Carrie, I am an attorney, but not specifically employment law. just because the employee wants something or is volunteering for it, doesn't absolve the obligation of the organization,
Mhm.
nor does it change the employment laws about compensation and time. I would suggest speaking, I think someone recommended requesting a legal volunteer or even just a short consultation, because there are some things that you might could do if the employees are exempt employees. You can't have part-time employees exempt, but there's a threshold what they have to be paid. It might not be that issue, but you definitely want to be careful, because even if the employee who's participating or involved in it isn't the one complaining, if an outside party or someone else brings it to the labor board about compensation, you still have huge issues. So I certainly would just kind of take that in mind. Even if the employee is completely fine with it, it could be a third party that's complaining.
Mhm. Wow, don't you just love all this information? This is just great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And please keep the questions coming, because this is as you can see, there's lots of expertise and skills in this space. And so this is how we ensure that we are doing our work the way in which we should be. So thanks. Reward, that's our third topic. And then we're going to graduate. So in terms of reward, we have highlighted career development, promotion, professional development, performance evaluation, doing compensation reviews, and status of workers. I think we just talked about status of workers, but these are the areas for this particular part of our work. So I want to take us to the handouts, right? The sheet that we showed you that we sent in your wraparound. We've got a variety of resources here that are available to you. For career development, we've got a resource on in terms of just kind of nonprofit careers. We have an area or a space on the NC Center's website where jobs are posted. And so that's a resource there. We highly encourage experiences like this institute for those individuals who are interested in having a career in the nonprofit sector, just to kind of continue to build their skills. And we encourage you to look for ways to engage your employees in those opportunities that are related to career development. We have a handout in your workbook in terms of some leadership attributes, some leader and manager attributes as it relates to working in this particular sector. So there's a list there of those resources, and so there's that, and so that's just there for you to reference as well. And we also have in your material, we have performance evaluation, and that's where I want to kind of hone in on, and I want to spend a little bit more time on that than any of the other items that we have listed. Lisa's going to talk to us about status of workers once I finish with this, and we've already shared with you some determinants of compensation, and then also we share with you a resource for living wage. So in terms of that, but I want to go to the evaluation, performance evaluation, trait-based versus behavior-based, and results, a results-based evaluation. I don't think, team, that we don't have to click on that source, but folks, you can go to that link while I just do some explaining, or as they say, splaining, about performance evaluation. So we talked about the fact that it is important to evaluate our employees. Typically that's done on an annual basis. And you know, each nonprofit has a very different level of capacity to do this. So you want to incorporate a way to evaluate your employees and volunteers. You know, boards of directors can self-evaluate their tools. We talked about that when we did board governance. And so, so in terms of thinking about a trait-based evaluation versus a behavior-based evaluation versus a results-based evaluation. So a trait-based evaluation is designed to focus on the characteristics of that employee and their attributes. And so how does their attributes and their characteristics, their traits, align with that job description and the work that they're doing? So you may design your evaluation where you hone in on attributes and characteristics, i.e. traits of that employee. Now, remember, if you go back to the worksheet that we used, we asked questions related to what skills does this job require? What tasks will this job do, et cetera, et cetera. So that helps you to kind of hone in on that. If it's in the job description, then you can include it in the evaluation. So that's kind of how we do that. Behavior-based evaluation. So here we're talking about the actions of that employee. So the actions that they engage in that are necessary to perform the job duties and responsibilities. So here, if you're evaluating behavior, you're looking specifically at the way in which they do their work, and you're evaluating them based on that. So that's important to keep in mind. So trait-based characteristics and attributes, behavior-based, what they actually do and how they perform their duties and responsibilities. And then results-based is, I like to look at this in 3 ways: deliverables, outcomes, and impact. So as an employee, what deliverables have they achieved or have they completed for the year? What outcomes are present as it relates to their roles and responsibilities? And keep in mind, deliverables, impact, and outcomes can be anticipated and unanticipated, right? So there may be some anticipated deliverables and outcomes and impact on the organization, on the community, that you anticipate from this person. But then there may be some unanticipated kind of deliverables and outcomes and impact that they've demonstrated or that they've been able to achieve as it results to the work that they do. So we have trait-based, behavior-based, results-based, and then you may want to evaluate using an eclectic approach. So you may want to evaluate elements of traits, elements of actions, elements of performance or deliverables, impact, and outcomes. So you may design your evaluation where it lines up that way. There are evaluations out there. You know, there are performance evaluations that already exist. And if you look, we have provided a resource here for you that further explains what I just shared, you know, in terms of traits-based, behavior-based, and results-based. Lisa, I think I have some questions in the chat. I just saw it I saw some things just kind of popping up.
They're coming in quick. Some are there on a various number of things.
Okay.
Let me see. Question I think we addressed in board governance, so you want to reiterate it. They're asking you about thoughts on paying a board member. That's a quick answer.
We don't pay board members.
Yep, not at all, under no circumstances.
Yep.
Are background checks done on a regular basis or just once when taking a position?
It varies. You know, some nonprofits provide programs, and Lisa, you may be familiar with this in your role, in your professional role, but some of our programs require regular background checks, and some require them at the point of hire. I think that is at the discretion of your agency, unless there's another entity that is prompting, you know, and then some agencies require like national background checks as opposed to just statewide background checks. I don't know, Lisa, if you have.
No, that's right. Got that. I'm trying to get these questions.
Gotcha.
From Deb, do you recommend an ED give the organization? Oh, wait a minute. How soon do you recommend an ED give the organization notice of retirement? Basically, how much time do you give the organization time to replace an ED? She just reiterated the question.
Okay, so what I would say is it depends. You know, it depends on your agency. What I am seeing, because I'm seeing quite a few retirements in the organizations that I work with, and I'm seeing about 1 year to 2 years notice, because it takes time to actually replace an executive director or a president and CEO. And the market is already challenging as it is. So that kind of adds another layer of that. What I'm seeing nonprofits do is I'm seeing them establish either some kind of a transition ad hoc group or some type of search committee where that is their responsibility to come up with a timeline for that and to instruct the rest of the organization on how they're going about that. I'm seeing board chairs kind of lead those transition groups. I myself served in a capacity for a nonprofit as they were transitioning from one president and CEO to the other. And so they had an interim person, and now they've identified that person and hired that person. And now they're in a transition phase to onboard that person into that role. So it shapes out differently depending upon your organization and what resources you have. Some organizations have the money, they can go out and consult with a firm and they do the whole thing for them. Well, that's a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 bill. In some organizations, they're doing it themselves.
And Donna's asking, which I think you went over earlier, would you say that the board chair is the executive director's boss? Wait a minute.
Would I say that the board, I wouldn't
Not
necessarily
the
say
board
they're
chair.
their boss. Actually, it's the entire board. The board
Mhm.
chair represents the whole board. And so I wouldn't just compartmentalize it to just just the board chair, but they do interface with the board chair more than they do any other board member. That I would agree.
Mhm. I
You
see
want to
my
create a
board chair.
culture. You want to create a culture where it's a collective. You don't want it to just be that one person is that.
Mhm.
So
Kalisha says, I see my board chair as my partner.
as you should,
Mhm.
yes.
I think that's everything. You covered it all.
Okay. All righty. Item, let's see, on our list is the, we do have a note in here or a part in here around compensation review. And we're referencing 2 pieces of information that we've already shared with you. This could be a heavy lift trying to do a compensation review for every single position that you have. But I do think you could minimally do kind of a secondary source review of like each of your positions. What is the market rate in terms of what their compensation should be? What are you actually paying them? What is the difference? It's good to keep that in front of you because there are competitors. And we know that our staff are recruited from us all the time. So you want to kind of pay attention to that. Lisa, I'm going to let you take over with status of workers.
Yes, really quick. I think a lot of us are understanding of this subject. So can someone unmute or just tell us the difference between a non-exempt and exempt employee? Anyone?
I believe exempt is when you have a set salary,
Mm-hmm.
and non-exempt is when you can get overtime, you get paid for the hours worked.
Right. So that's a good explanation. So non-exempt, you do not pay employees any work worked, the double word there, over 40 hours, right? They typically will make less than a certain annual amount, and they don't have any executive or administrative duties. So they're not supervising anyone per se. If you have an exempt employee, that goes back to that number 5 that Dr. Palmer talked about, y'all laughed about earlier. usually work until the work is done when you're an exempt employee, and you usually have some kind of executive role, whether you're receiving a certain salary, you're earning a particular annual salary, and or your duties are executive duties, the difference there. So that's right. What about the difference between an independent contractor and a employee? What's the difference there?
An independent contractor is, I believe, from our experience, when they do a job for an agreed amount of money and you write them a flat check for reimbursement, compensation, and they handle their own taxes and Social Security and withholdings and all of that. Whereas employees, the responsibility of the withholdings and taxes are on the employer.
Right. And that's an important distinction. So you want to make sure when you have employees and independent contractors, you're not treating an independent contractor like an employee. So again, like repeating what Carrie said, they're making their own hours. They usually bring their own work tools. So you're not giving them a computer. You're not giving them stipends to come to work as you would do or mileage reimbursements, things like that. Unless that's written in their contract somewhere that you've established with them that they get these kind of reimbursements. Typically, they're handling everything themselves and they're not an employee. And obviously employee, you understand what an employee is, right? But the difference there. So the main difference again between the two, the independent contractor makes their own hours and they bring their own tools and you negotiate with them what their service of delivery will be. I have a question. How can an employee know if they're exempt or non-exempt? Would this be in there? Yes, it should be. They should understand when someone's coming to apply for a job, they should know right off the bat, or you should be telling them whether this is an exempt position or this is a non-exempt position. And it should be within their job description if you're going to describe it as such. Yeah, someone said that it's added to their job description. Anything else? Just a short clarification. I think pretty much people are pretty familiar with it too, but just if you have any other questions about that, just pop it into the chat. Dr. Palmer, did she go away? There she is. I didn't take too long on that because folks pretty much get the gist of it. You're on mute, Dr. Palmer.
Sorry, I'm not sure what was going on with my with my device here. So we are moving right along, and hopefully there was some clarity around status of workers. Each and every time I hear Lisa explain that, I have to kind of keep rehearing it to understand the difference in the status of workers in our organizations, and that has a lot to do with how we how we work with each of our employees and contracted individuals and so on and so forth. So in terms of our information that we covered today, we have completed our material on recruitment, retention, and reward. So just a real quick kind of revisit of where we started on day one. Do you remember us talking about our capacity building framework and what those different pieces are? So there are some elements of our capacity building framework that we shared. How many principles and practices guides do we have? Just put it in the chat for me. Kind of bringing all of this full circle. How many principles and practices guides do we have? Lisa, how many guides do we have? Guides. We have one guide.
That was a trick question, Dr. Palmer, because I had to think about that twice myself. I was like, huh? That was a trick question, guys.
All righty. And then how many principals do we have? How many principals do we have?
There we go.
We have to.
Mhm.
And how many frames do we have? How many management conditions are there? And what are they? What are those management conditions? So when we're looking at those 12 principles and we're trying to determine where we are in terms of our capacity, what are those? What are we looking at? How many frames? 3, that's right, I see it. Does anybody know what oh, there we go.
Mhm.
Build, thrive, and sustain. That is absolutely correct. And how many practices do we have?
I think I saw that earlier. Yes, there we go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we've got 216 practices across the 12. And we have, I think, right at 125, if you just look at the 6 that we are focused on in this. So we've covered quite a bit of information over the last 6 weeks. And it is always exciting to kind of get to this point in the Institute when we are kind of finishing up and bringing about a little bit of closure. As it relates to just kind of a reflection, we have a participant reflection that we want you to do, and we're going to do this. Is it okay? I'm looking at my time, Rebecca. Is it okay if we do this in a breakout? I think
Sure.
we should. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So we're going to go into breakouts, and again, another opportunity for us to connect with folks that are in the group. We want to know and want you to kind of think about how this information that you have gathered from this institute, how do you think that this might be useful? How useful do you think this information is? So we want to have you to have a conversation about that. How will you be using this information? How useful is it? So we want to reflect in the space of usefulness and how usable is this info. So I'm going to let Rebecca take over. And then, so I'm looking at 11:48. We are, let's take about 5 minutes, Rebecca, and
Okay.
then that'll put us at what, 11:55,
Mhm.
and we'll come back, and everybody go ahead and take your break. So when you come back into the main gallery, just go ahead and take the break, and then we'll come back for graduation. Is that
Sounds good.
good? Okay.
Sounds good. All right, opening up the rooms.
So proud. There goes my baby. There's Mary, there's Michelle, there's Julie, there's Carrie, there's Elizabeth. Oh. There's Morgan, there's Janet, there's Tamika, Rita. Oh, I'm so proud.
just keeps going
I know.
and building, and getting louder. We'll go ahead and pause the music, and thank you, Leslie. And we will let Lisa go ahead and Dr. Palmer give our welcome for graduation. We'll pull up our program slide.
I know, that was so emotional. Every time I hear that song, I said, you know, I'm not going to get emotional about it, but it always brings up a good feeling. So congratulations, team. You made it through. I hope you guys are all proud of that. I'm sure you are. It must be a very proud moment for all of you. I know it is for us here at the center at the end of each class. Each class brings something different for us each time this is our what? Our 6th round? Is it, what is it? Our 5th or 6th institute? No, I forget. Which one is it, Rebecca?
This is our 5th.
Our
Our
5th.
5th.
Our 5th time doing it. And each time we do it, again, like I said, because each group brings so much value to our discussions. So we at the center hope you cherish the fruits of your hard work. And I hope that the Nonprofit Management Institute will help improve all that you're trying to do to enhance your organizations. We want you to be bold, be courageous, and most of all, be your best at everything that you're doing to try to improve your organizations. So again, I congratulate you and happy graduation. Dr. Palmer?
Welcome to our fall 2022 graduation ceremony. Wow, it has been an awesome 6 weeks, and we are always so excited when we get to this point in our institute. Today, you have an agenda of nice celebratory activities that we're going to engage in to celebrate your graduation. Our very own president and CEO of the NC Center for Nonprofits will provide our commencement address, and yours truly will be conferring the certificates. We will spend some time viewing our graduation videos and photos, and then we will officially close out the Institute for fall 2022. Welcome.
And just to reiterate, here's our wonderful, fabulous team here at the center that works really hard in the background to make sure we bring you all the educational information that you need. Feel free at any point in time to email, contact any one of us for any concerns or questions you may have going forward. So just want to show everyone there really quickly. We don't have Sarah up there, but Sarah's part of our team as well, who does some of our technical backgrounds as well. Nice.
Let me know when you want me to go, Lisa. I'm following your lead.
Sorry, I think
That's
you're
all right.
next. I think you're up next.
Okay, shall I begin?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go to the gallery and Jean can give our commencement. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Leslie.
Oh, boy, thank you. And I love seeing all of the celebration backgrounds, the congratulations, the pats on the back, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really big day. So congratulations, you did it. Let me quote Dr. Palmer when she talks about this work and building our capacity. Building our own and our organization's capacity is a marathon, not a sprint. Even sometimes when we feel like we're just running and running and running, just remember to pace yourself because it is a marathon. You all have successfully completed the Center's Nonprofit Management Institute. This is important not just for the learning you gained. It demonstrates that you take your role in the nonprofit sector seriously. You understand how important it is to develop yourself, and you have committed to capacity building for your organization. There are many challenges in achieving your mission day. You bring your passion for your mission to work every day. These past couple of years, we're not out of the woods yet, right? Have been anything but easy. Many of you have carried on in the face of serious professional challenges, work challenges, family challenges, health issues. Oh my goodness, what happened in 2020? And here we are, 2022. It's just amazing. We're here. So I think we should just take a moment to commend you all. I'm gonna give you some reflections on our learning together But before we do that, I want to see everybody applauding for your copy yourself and pat yourself on the back. Take a minute. Applause, 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 applause. It's a really big deal. So what are some of the things that I would take away from our learning together? And I'll say that I just have really enjoyed being in the background listening. I've tried to be in the background most of the sessions. Sometimes I had to miss, but I just really enjoy learning every day new things and then learning from you. So takeaways. Remember your why. Remember your why can be personal. You have lived experiences bringing you to the work you do every day. It's often so difficult, even as it is rewarding and self-satisfying. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for more than 40 years. And one of the things I've appreciated is knowing that when I put my feet on the floor in the morning, I will have meaningful work living into my purpose. I try to remember the administrative, operational, and resource management aspects of my job are necessary, but not the essence of my why. There are means to achieve and fulfill my purpose, but passion and mission can be lost without good management and operations. Both are essential. If I do focus on both, then I am really fulfilling my purpose. And this is what you can do too. Continue to grow personally and professionally. What you're doing here is evidence of your commitment. This professional development can be as intensive as a graduate degree, as exciting and valuable as this institute, and can be as simple as taking time out of your work to read and reflect. Being busy is not always the same as being productive. Remember that your organization is a reflection of you and all who work with you, volunteers and staff. They need support, affirmation, and capacity building. Remember to stop and say thank you to those who work. Nonprofit work is a team sport, and none of us can go it alone. Lead from the seat you're in. Know what your responsibilities are, understand your personal vision, and bring your organization to a shared vision. Know what you know and accept what you don't know and won't know everything you need to do this. If you are executive director or in senior management, you know each day brings new challenges, often unseen. Be ready to pivot. The conditions of the pandemic have changed and will be changing again. We're not out of the woods. The state of the nonprofit sector, in my opinion, as I look out over the state of North Carolina, is really quite fragile. We have leaders leaving in ways that we haven't seen in the past. We all keep talking about resilience, but it may be just that we're tired or exhausted. Let's pace ourselves. If you're here today, you deserve a pat on the back because you've been leading your team from the seat you're in, and given the current circumstances, you have survived. So live into your leadership role. Recognize the leadership in those with whom you serve. Just because you're executive director doesn't mean that there aren't other leaders within the organization. And each on your team can lead and be a leader. Not everyone will be an executive director, but the leadership skills needed to do each position can be developed, and personal and professional growth can be developed any seat in the room. When you develop your team, share and cultivate leadership with all those with whom you work, you will become a star. I've often said, if I want to take all the credit, then I need to be ready to take all the buck. While the buck stops here, getting here is a shared journey, and many hands lighten the load and increases the joy. When we achieve our mission, we can all celebrate and share in the success. As we consider our leadership roles, we have the opportunity to live into our values around equity, diversity, and inclusion. Our mission work is strengthened as a result. I really appreciate the depth of the discussion that Dr. Palmer shares in our HR discussion and our encouragement of creating safe and brave spaces for people to share their authentic self. Find ways to practice self-care. Not all organizations have strong leave policies, and they should, although they should wherever possible. We give so much of ourselves each day, and in order to find that joy each morning when our feet hit the floor, we must replenish. However, you can do this in ways that are fitting for you. Taking a walk, going to a movie, reading a good book, enjoying a nice meal, and taking vacations provided by your organization, encouraging all staff to do the same. Y'all know, I bet some of you are guilty. You have that vacation leave time. I know I did it for almost 20 years. Oh yeah, I need to take a vacation, but oh my goodness, I have this thing I have to get done. That's not acceptable. You have to take care of yourself. In concluding, we know that many of us have learned so much about ourselves during this time. We hope that one of the highlights of this time has been learning more about what you can do, must do, and what you can let go of. You are making it. We want you to know how much we at the center value you, your hard work, your compassion, your commitment to making your communities better and stronger. We also need to, continue to take care of ourselves, each other, and we should remember what life was like before COVID. And for all of us, it's the before COVID life and the after COVID life. So these are the kinds of things that we've experienced together. I hope that you've found this learning experience to be valuable, and we hope that you are members of the Center for Nonprofits. And if you aren't now, you're going to go back to the organization and say, we really need to become members. Together we have a stronger voice, and we need you. You need us, but we need you at our table as we seek to educate, connect, and advocate for the nonprofit sector. So congratulations to all. And let me say again, thank you to our sponsors and our partners, Triangle Community Foundation and the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium. Let's give a shout out of gratitude to Dr. Palmer for her guidance throughout this program, and to the center team that brought this to you. They're rock stars, Lisa and Leslie. So thank you all so very, very much, and let's with the graduation. Thank you for allowing
Awesome.
me to be here and share a few reflections.
Thank you, Jean. Oh, I just loved all of what you had to say. And thank you for capturing our journey over the past 6 weeks. Wow. As I said before, here we are. And now the conferring of the nonprofit management certificates. Yay. It is my honor to officially confer and graduate the fall 2022 participants of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits Nonprofit Management Institute. Congratulations. And please pay attention to the screen for the roll call of all of our graduates. Congratulations, graduates.
Can we turn off? Can we do our tassel thing? There we go. There we go.
Awesome.
Nice. Thank you all. That was excellent. Congratulations. We have a short video, graduation videos compiled that we want to share with you. It's about 5 minutes long, and then we'll come back. We'll take class photos in gallery mode. We'll give you some final links and to-dos before we close today's session. Let me go ahead and queue up our, okay. Let me go ahead and right here. Uh-oh, hold on, the cat just decided to destroy the room. Okay, we're back.
My son just called me and said, "Way to go, Mom."
Aw.
Way to go to all of you too.
I love it.
I love it. All right, buckle up, and if you got some popcorn or a soda, pull it out for this graduation montage. Go ahead. Full screen. Oops, I got to do my sound. Hold on. Up. Audio settings. Do speaker. I know I can do this. Here we go. HP. Let's try now. Oh no. Please hold. Oh, I think this happened to me last time, did it not?
I don't know.
I think it's under
Do I
view
need to do-
options,
oh.
share sound. I think it's under view options, share sound.
Can you all hear that?
No.
Someone is saying go under view options and share sound.
I'm gonna try this. Hold on one sec. Can you all hear this?
Nope.
No.
When you originally shared your screen, did you check that little box at the bottom about sharing audio?
Yeah, try stop sharing and then go back and
Share
check those
again.
boxes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Greetings, cohort 2022.
there it is.
Nonprofit Management Institute.
I think we're getting it.
Congratulations to each of you
It's a little
who
louder.
completed the process of all of the work sessions to learn of managing a nonprofit. It was great getting to know each and every one of you. I wish you the best. I am hopeful that the skills that you've learned through the Institute will be helpful and useful as you continue on this journey.
Can I hear it?
In nonprofit organizations.
Too low. Can you, I have my volume up as high as possible.
And maybe you turn your volume up on your device, Rebecca,
Yeah.
on your actual device.
Great getting to know you.
Hello, this is Tamika Robinson, and I had the
Is that any better? Are you all able to hear any better?
It's a
No,
little
still pretty
better.
soft.
It's a-
I
Try-
have,
Did you turn the volume up on your computer?
And we all learn together, so we're
Like
good.
on your keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
turn up your volume.
All the way.
that you shared really is going to help us to organize our nonprofits.
There you go.
And to provide better service.
That's
So
good.
thank you so much for all that you've done. We're looking forward to continuing to network with the group. Thank you.
So this experience has been amazing. There has been so much important and helpful information that's been shared over this brief time period, and just the tools and the resources are extremely valuable. We don't even know how valuable they'll be until we start using them and these scenarios come up and we have that resource, but just having that there is amazing. And also networking, connecting with everyone has been a great opportunity and a great experience, and even meeting people outside of this institute already. So it's just been a fantastic experience, and I've been thankful to be a part of it.
What I value the most about the Nonprofit Management Institute is they recognize that we are change makers. And the road we take by working in the nonprofit world is not always the easiest. So by giving us the tools and providing us with resources, the Nonprofit Management Institute empowers us in making the world a better place.
I value the information given by everyone from the team. I think it was very helpful, and I enjoyed the conversations that I had during the breakout rooms.
What I valued most about the Nonprofit Management Institute over these last couple weeks of the course has really just been to deepen my knowledge and understanding as I run this nonprofit to better the lives of the people that I'm serving, and also to take this knowledge with me wherever I go in the future. So thank you.
Thanks to the Institute, I feel like I'm better prepared to handle day-to-day life in a nonprofit in the management role.
As a program director, I think this experience had helped me make sure that I support my executive director in compliance with some of the things we have to do as a nonprofit. Also, as a nonprofit leader or program director, I feel like I can have a better understanding of how to encourage my staff to be aligned with what is needed as an organization.
So one thing that was really unexpected to me, even though I was aware of the class content, was the strategic planning class. Just the amount of information and the breakdown of how to dive into one, especially relative to our organization at this time, it is so critical. And I will now have the resources and tools to show why we need a strategic plan, show why we need to keep it updated and be a collaborative process, and really advocate for that, as well as implementing it in a way that is effective for everyone. So I'm excited to do so, and excited that this institute kind of helped that put into perspective for me.
I am a new executive director of a nonprofit that I founded myself. So I've come into this class as a layperson, essentially, and have been given a lot of great information, education, discussion that has helped to empower me and embolden me to walk in my new role as an executive director with more confidence. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversations. It was great to have a cohort members who are willing to share their own experiences and willing to hear my own experiences. And I really hope that this information, we are able to take it and do actionable steps, even if they're small.
All in all, this experience has been fantastic, and I want to say thank you for the collaboration that made this possible. Thank you to the Community Foundation. Thank you to the Center of Nonprofits. Thank you for all of it. And especially thank you for the scholarships and things that make it available for some of the nonprofit leaders who don't have the capacity and the budget for training such as this, that we can still get education, that we can still learn, that we can still advance ourselves regardless of that. It means so much. It allows us to grow, and especially allows us to shine and make an impact in the community. So thank you for making that difference for students like me.
The Nonprofit Management Institute has taught me so much in the last few weeks, and I am super excited about all of it. It has reignited a passion for nonprofit work for me, and hopefully someday the knowledge and education will help me be an amazing ED somewhere. Thank you.
Connections are everything. Stay out there in the nonprofit world and keep in contact.
To all my fellow classmates, it has been a pleasure getting to know you and more about your nonprofits and the organizations that you have such a passion for. I hope that everyone keeps on dreaming and achieves your dreams, and may you have more success than you can ever imagine.
That was great.
Yeah, I'm on this. It's almost finished. Thank God. It's 12:30. 12:30. Goodness. This one.
Oops. Okay, so I think we're ready for our class picture, so we won't keep folks much longer. That was great. Thank you for all those you shared. We didn't lose Rebecca, did we? No, she's there. Everyone, please hold. Don't leave. I think we're waiting on Rebecca and Leslie to say something about the picture. You guys don't want me to do it. I'll mess it all up.
Here we go. Can
Okay,
you?
there.
Yep.
Here
Yeah, we got it.
When I go from the sound through the computer and then to my microphone, I have all kinds of issues with my sound. So thank you for contributing to that. It was wonderful to see your faces and hear your voices and see all of your cool backgrounds. And we really appreciate you being part of that if you were able to. We're going to take class photos now. So what I'm going to do is have you all on the first screen. I'm going to use my snipping tool. And let me go ahead and change my view to gallery with full screen. There we go. All right. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and move you guys. Oh, hold on. Exit full screen. Okay, let me move you over here. There we go. Now we're working. Now we're cooking with oil. View full screen. All right, let me get my snipping tool. So these class photos will be sent to you all along with your certificate after today's session. Usually it takes us a couple weeks just to get them all mailed out, but be on the lookout. So let me go ahead and get the first screen here of all of you. All right, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to save this one as screen 1. Right, there we go. And then we'll get our screen view, folks. And go ahead and transition over there. I'll get my snipping tool ready. All right, screen 2. There we go. Save that. All right. There's my cat who is wanting her lunch. Gently reminding me that we're over time. So real quick, some quick notes for you all, just to share really quickly. Thank you so much for being a part of today's session and this entire series. We will, like I said, be sending you yes, thank you, Leslie. We will be sending out a link or a link for the Duke Nonprofit Management Certificate Program. You can look for that in the wraparound email. It'll be a simple form that you just fill out to express your interest in applying for those 15 credits. And then we'll go ahead and send that off to Duke so that they can then send you the paperwork for that. And it's all done through Adobe Sign. So it's nice and quick and easy. Reminder to stay in the loop with the Facebook group page and connect with your fellow peers. Maybe make some time to meet up and connect with one another. We will provide a contact list in the wraparound as well, so you can keep in touch. And we just want to thank you again for participating. It's really important work, and you should feel very proud. You should celebrate in some way that feels meaningful to you. And we'll hope to see you all again soon.
And we hope,
yeah.
Again, and we hope to see you all at the conference. So if you see us before we see you, come say hello. And we're going to give you a shout out. So hopefully those can attend will.
Yes, thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you around.
Thank you.
Well done. Congrats.
All right.
Thank you, team. Great job.